Right now, your greatest weakness is exposed. You don't see it, but everyone else does. The moment someone questions you, you explain. The moment someone doubts you, you defend. And every word you spill is a nail in your own coffin. Authority is never explained. It is assumed, or it is lost. In the next few minutes, you'll learn why silence makes kings and explanations make servants. Imagine a courtroom where no judge ever speaks. He doesn't argue, he doesn't justify, he doesn't defend. Yet the entire room bends to his presence. That is the psychology of power, certainty without words. And you, right now, are leaking it away every time you open your mouth to prove yourself. If you've ever walked away from a conversation replaying your own words, regretting how much you said, this is for you. Here, we don't play defense. We don't justify. We build gravity that silences opposition before it speaks. You're watching Curiosity to Wisdom. Subscribe if you're done explaining and ready to command. The enemy is not out there. It is not in your rivals, nor in your critics, nor in the people who challenge you. The enemy lives within you, hidden beneath your own tongue. It is that small, desperate addict begging for approval, a parasite that wakes every time you are questioned. The moment pressure rises, when eyes turn toward you, when suspicion or doubt hovers in the air, that parasite seizes control. Your inner servant takes the throne. It does not fight. It does not command. It bows. It scrambles for validation, eager to explain, desperate to defend, pleading with invisible juries you imagine around you. And in that moment, you betray yourself. You call this instinct humility. You tell yourself that offering explanations is fairness, that defending yourself is honesty, that proving your position is strength. But none of that is true. This is not strength. This is weakness, disguised in the clothing of virtue. This is self-betrayal, dressed as humility. You are not preserving your dignity. You are dismantling it with your own hands. When you explain yourself, you broadcast something fatal. I am guilty until proven innocent. You tell the world you are on trial, standing before them as a defendant, hoping they will grant you pardon. But you are not on trial. Authority does not kneel before judgment. Authority does not beg for understanding. Authority does not justify itself in words. Authority declares. Authority acts, and then it waits in silence, forcing others to live with its weight. Every unnecessary word you add is a confession of weakness, of fear, of insecurity you cannot conceal. You imagine explanations rescue your image, but they don't. They assassinate it in front of everyone watching. A judge does not prove his judgment. A general does not explain his orders. A lion does not justify his roar. They declare, they move, they end. And the world accepts because the world bends before certainty. The addiction must die here, because every time you explain, you kneel, and the world never forgets who chose to kneel. Centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli delivered a warning that still cuts through time like a blade. The gravest error a ruler can commit is to appear desperate for validation. Power collapses the moment it begs to be understood. To explain yourself is not simply to reveal detail. It is to confess weakness. To defend yourself is not merely to respond. It is to expose dependence. You hand the knife to your adversary the moment you open your mouth in self-justification. The great princes of Renaissance Italy understood this law instinctively. They lived in a world of daggers in the dark, shifting alliances, sudden betrayals. In such an environment, words were never shields, they were leaks. Silence, by contrast, was not emptiness. Silence was armor. Silence was fortress. Silence was the strategy that separated rulers from petitioners. Cesare Borgia, perhaps the sharpest of them all, faced endless accusations of cruelty. He never justified himself. He never stood before crowds begging them to understand his actions. He acted. He decided. He struck. He left the world no explanations, only consequences, and consequences spoke louder than any words ever could. And this is the eternal lesson. Explanations humanize you. They strip away the mystery. They drag you down from the throne and place you in the dust with the mob. The mob explains itself endlessly, justifying every action, every failure, every excuse. Leaders never can. Leaders must remain untouchable, unknowable, removed from the noise. When you are silent, the people invent stories about you, and their stories are far grander, darker, and more powerful than anything you could construct with your own tongue. When you speak, you puncture that myth. You collapse your aura into mere flesh. You want to be feared? Stop explaining. You want to be respected? Stop defending. You want authority that endures? Learn this truth. Power is not dialogue. Power is theater. And in theater, the silent figure, the one who refuses to justify, the one who leaves the room with more questions than answers, he always owns the stage. Picture a boardroom. The air is heavy, the kind of tension that hums even before words are spoken. Eyes are fixed on you. Then it happens. An accusation is hurled across the table, sharp, direct, designed to corner you. Your instinct flares. Explain yourself, prove them wrong, defend your decision. But that instinct is a trap. The moment you explain, you step into their frame. The moment you defend, you kneel. This is where you deploy the silent verdict. It is not passive. It is execution without a word. Step 1, hold still. Resist the urge to fidget, to shift, to show agitation. Stillness signals control. Step 2, raise your eyes once, deliberately, as if measuring the person who dared to challenge you. A glance long enough to remind them they spoke out of turn, but short enough to deny them a duel. Step 3, breathe. Pause. Let silence hang in the air until it grows unbearable. Let it stretch so long that the accuser begins to hear their own echo. Silence is not absence, it is suffocation. Then comes the strike. Deliver a short, final line. Noted, or incorrect, or nothing more than a slow shake of your head. And then you move on, turning your attention to the next agenda point, the next person, the next direction. The dismissal is total because you never gave them oxygen. Do not overtalk. Do not defend. Do not linger. Every extra word is a leak of power, every justification, an admission that their accusation deserved weight. By refusing to explain, you starve the challenge of air. And when air is cut off, fire dies. The room slows. The temperature shifts. Their attack dissolves into silence you created. Your verdict is final, not because you proved anything, but because you refused to. They wanted you to step into their trial. Instead, you closed the court. That is the sound of authority. Cold, brief, absolute. The verdict lands not in what you said, but in everything you refused to say. Sometimes silence is not enough. Sometimes a challenge is too bold, too direct, too sharp to be met with nothing. In those moments, you don't retreat into stillness. You advance with precision. This is when you wield the Velvet Dagger. It is not rage. It is not noise. It is not defense. It is incision. Clean, swift, merciless. Picture this. A colleague leans forward in the meeting, questioning your decision in front of others. They expect you to defend yourself. They want you to list reasons, to walk through logic, to battle in front of the room. But instead of defending, you slice. You lean back, not forward, because leaning back communicates confidence. Your body says you are not pressed, not cornered, not rattled. Your voice stays steady, calm, almost casual. And then the strike comes. I understand why you see it that way, but you're wrong. That's it. No list of reasons, no evidence, no debate. You move forward immediately, redirecting attention to the next point, the next command, the next matter that actually deserves your focus. The dagger lands because it looks like velvet, soft, polite, even courteous, but underneath it leaves no room for their ego to recover. It strips the weight from their challenge and leaves it bleeding on the table while you advance without pause. The secret here is discipline. Never repeat yourself. Never soften the edge. Never circle back to clarify. Once delivered, the dagger must stay in their ribs. The danger comes after the strike. The temptation to explain, to add, to dilute the blow. Over-explaining dulls the blade, and in trying to reinforce your authority, you destroy it. What does success look like? Their eyes flicker, their words stumble, their confidence drains as the room shifts around your certainty. The conversation does not orbit them anymore. It orbits you. You didn't debate, you didn't prove, you didn't defend. You cut once, cleanly, and moved forward. That is the Velvet Dagger. One line, one strike. Curtain closed. You see how this works? Every explanation you used to give was a chain. Every silence you command now is a weapon. And if you're serious about building this authority, not the fake kind, but the kind that bends rooms, then stay with me. Because the next moves will change how you're seen forever. You're watching curiosity to wisdom. If you're ready to stop justifying and start commanding, subscribe now and step into the frame of power. There is a weapon sharper than words, colder than silence, more unsettling than a direct strike. That weapon is absence. Most people believe power comes from speaking louder, pushing harder, showing up more. But the truth is inverted. Power often comes from not being there. When someone demands your defense, when they summon you to explain yourself, when they expect your presence to validate their accusations, you do not give them what they want. You simply don't show up. This is the empty chair. Picture a rival waiting across the table, expecting confrontation, expecting you to sit down and argue. Instead, the chair remains empty. They are forced to rehearse their lines against silence. They are left alone with their accusations, which now echo into nothingness. The very absence of your body becomes presence, louder, heavier, more commanding than your words could ever be. Here's how you wield it. When pressure builds, withdraw without warning. Do not explain. Do not announce. Do not excuse. You cancel the meeting. You delay the reply. You vanish from the room. And then you let the silence stretch. Hours, days, weeks, long enough that the weight of your absence begins to grow. Absence inflates value. It makes people think, obsess, speculate. It makes them talk about you instead of to you. Your shadow becomes the topic, your silence, the message. When they finally reach for you, through a follow-up, a demand, a question, you do not rush. You return at your timing, not theirs. You re-enter like a storm that chooses when to break. The message is clear. You do not chase frames, you create them. But beware the danger. Overuse the empty chair, and you risk appearing evasive, cowardly, avoidant. Precision is everything. Deploy it only when their hunger for your presence is high enough that withdrawal stings. Used with skill, the empty chair forces others to negotiate not with your words, not with your defenses, but with your absence. And nothing weighs heavier, nothing suffocates more completely than a shadow they cannot touch. You fear rejection. That is why you explain. You think that if you can clarify, justify, or plead your case, you can turn a no into a yes. But the very act of explaining reveals that you are terrified of being denied. You signal dependence. You confess that their approval has the power to define you. And in that confession, you lose all leverage. But here is the reversal, the truth no one tells you. Rejection is not your enemy. Rejection is your resource. It is a stage upon which you can flip the script and demonstrate authority. When they say no, your instinct is to argue. Resist. Step 1. Freeze. Stillness communicates control. Do not react, do not counter, do not flinch. Step 2. Withdraw presence. Physically, if possible. Emotionally, always. Digitally, absolutely. You do not chase, you do not clarify, you do not send a second message. You vanish. Their rejection expected a duel. Instead, they are left shadowboxing an empty stage. Step 3. Rewrite the story. Not for them, but for yourself. Their rejection is not about your worth. It is about scarcity. It is about the fact that you are no longer available. Absence reframes rejection. It transforms their no into the hunger of missing something they cannot reach again. Step 4. Return, but only with gravity. You do not come back with explanations or apologies. You come back like a storm cloud, present, heavy, undeniable, commanding the room with silence before you speak. They expected a plea. They expected need. They expected you to fight for their approval. Instead, they receive indifference, and indifference terrifies. It whispers the most dangerous message of all: I do not need you. Understand this. What feels like weakness to you is, when inverted, the sharpest form of power. To absorb rejection without bending is to become unshakable. To turn rejection into scarcity is to become untouchable. That is not weakness. That is not defense. That is the most terrifying power of all.
Here is the ruthless protocol. It is not theory. It is not suggestion. It is a set of behaviors, simple, disciplined, lethal, that carve authority into every room you enter. Speak fewer words. Every extra syllable you utter leaks power. When you cut your words down to the necessary, every statement becomes heavy, deliberate, final. Brevity is gravity. Lower your pitch. Your voice is not merely sound, it is signal. A lower tone communicates control, certainty, dominance. Never rush, never raise, never crack. Authority speaks in steady resonance, not frantic defense. Slow your tempo. The faster you speak, the weaker you appear. Speed looks like fear. Slowness signals command. Let your sentences land like stones dropped into water, each one rippling outward long after you stop. Let silence follow your statements. Do not rush to fill the air. The silence is not empty. It is your echo, magnified. Those who cannot endure it will expose their insecurity. You, by enduring it, prove your strength. Say, I disagree, and move on. No defense, no supporting essay, just the cold verdict. This shuts doors without leaving openings for argument. Never explain, never justify. That is the law. To explain is to beg. To justify is to kneel. Authority does neither. End scenes clean. Noted. Incorrect. We're done. These are the punctuation marks of power. Final, sharp, irrefutable. Leave no dangling threads. Then comes strategy. Use absence. Vanish when you are over-pursued. Scarcity inflates your value. Confront when disrespected. Do not let challenges linger, but strike clean, precise, immediate. Redirect when cornered. You never accept their frame. You dissolve it and replace it with your own. Understand this. Your micro-behaviors become your weapons. Stillness is not passive. It is a fortress. Brevity is not lack. It is leverage. Gravity is not mood. It is command. Every tick of the eye, every pause of the voice, every calculated silence is an arrow you choose when to release. And when calibrated with precision, those tiny behaviors bend entire rooms to your will. This is where the transformation begins. The shift is not cosmetic. It is not about speaking in a slightly different tone or holding your body a little straighter. It is far deeper. It is the difference between being seen as a person, ordinary, reachable, explainable, and being recognized as something more. You evolve from a figure who explains, pleads, and justifies into one who does not need to. From a voice that defends into an aura that commands. From a fragile self, chained to the approval of others, into a presence that bends the environment itself. Understand this. Presence is not a costume. It is not something you try to project. Presence is the disciplined absence of weakness. When you cut away the need to explain, the compulsion to defend, the hunger for validation, what remains is gravity. And gravity does not argue. Gravity does not justify. Gravity simply pulls everything around it into orbit. You are no longer a man or a woman seated in a chair. You are no longer a participant in a conversation. You are not even a voice among voices. You are a presence. And presence cannot be debated. Presence cannot be argued with. Presence is endured. Legends are not built on chatter, excuses, or explanations. Legends are built on inevitability. The inevitability of your stillness. The inevitability of your calm. The inevitability that when you do speak, you strike with precision, and when you do not, your silence crushes harder than any word could. When you master silence, absence, and brevity, you stop being reachable. And what cannot be reached cannot be rejected. No one argues with the storm. No one debates with the mountain. They adjust. They bend. They orient themselves around you because you no longer bend toward them. This is not psychology. This is myth-making. The careful construction of an aura that lives larger than your flesh. When you no longer explain, you no longer chase. When you no longer defend, you no longer kneel. You are no longer optional. You are inevitable. If you're done explaining, this is your threshold. Not a suggestion, not a polite invitation, a threshold. You stand at the line between who you were, the person who defended, who justified, who begged for validation, and who you will become, the one who does not, the one who commands without proving, who declares without debate, who holds the silence like a blade. Like this video, if you are ready to silence the servant inside you. That part of you that trembles under the gaze of others. That voice that scrambles for approval the moment resistance rises. That inner weakness that has kept you kneeling when you should have been standing. Kill it here. Kill it now. Every time you resist the urge to explain, you take another step across this threshold. Subscribe if you are building the one thing no enemy, no rival, no critic can move. An identity that does not negotiate. Not an identity of constant explanation. Not an identity chained to external judgment, but one forged in silence, scarcity, and certainty. Because when you build that identity, you are no longer participating in arguments. You are dictating atmospheres. You are no longer trying to win approval. You are sculpting inevitability. And understand this, authority is not spoken. It is felt. It is carried in the way the room slows when you enter, in the way voices shift when you hold your silence, in the way others hesitate before speaking your name. Authority is not in the noise, it is in the gravity that radiates from your restraint. So carry this truth with you, not as a quote, not as a thought, but as a command etched into your actions. They cannot reject what they cannot reach. That is the law, that is the power, and once you embrace it, explanations die forever.